understand music therapy. Oh, hello there. Didn't see you for a moment. So I thought I'd go for. It's been a while since I've done one of my discography review videos. So I'm gonna try getting a few more in. And today I'm going to be looking at Kid Cudi. Mr. Kid is a rapper, vocalist from Cleveland, Ohio, originally parts of Kanye's Good Music, then branched out uh, to do his own labels. And has always had a reasonably consistent career. Maybe not necessarily the most commercially successful, but certainly attaining a level of success has been very influential to a lot of the current crop of rappers, really like the kind of SoundCloud kind of style of artists. So it'll be interesting to have a look over his albums. We have 10 in total, including a couple of collaborative albums. I thought I might as well group them all together to look through. So let's begin. We start at number 10 on our list with Speeding Bullet to Heaven, released in December 2015. This is Cudi's like alternative rock album. Essentially, it's kind of very grungy, 90s influenced. And with Cudi being such a experimental artist, he certainly has these kind of influences to draw from, and it's interesting to hear him doing this and taking more of an instrumental approach on the album, playing a lot of guitar for the album as well. Unfortunately, by the time you've heard the first song, essentially you've heard the entire album, because it doesn't. Cudi kind of only really seems to know on this project anyway how to play one 90s alternative rock song, and it kind of becomes the same throughout the entirety of the album. Lead single Confused at least has a bit more life to it, but even then it's only sort of a step above a lot of the rest that you get on here. Managed to pull in Mike Judge for his Beavis and Butthead character throughout, doing some skits as well, presumably to add to the 90s aesthetic of it. They don't really seem to add that much else otherwise. I mean, perhaps there is, but that means having to go through the entire album again to try and work that out, which is not really worth doing. Particularly with it being technically a double album, with the side A being the actual album and the side B having some outtakes and demos, which means it's over 90 minutes of material altogether. I mean, if you really are die hard and want to really delve into this him taking on this style properly, you can do, but I just don't really think he manages to carry it off for the length of this project, unfortunately. So number 9 on our list, we are going to go with, there we are, Man on the Moon 3, The Chosen, released in December 2020 as the third chapter to his Man on the Moon series, which is initially what his initial commercial success came from, this album series. This is, I suppose, it's not, at the moment it's the final chapter of the album. At the end of the album it does say to be continued. I don't know whether there is going to be any follow-up at any point. The next project is supposed to be Insano, which is what I was initially going to kind of wait for him to release before doing this look look over. But it's not apparently not going to be coming until January next year, and it's supposed to be a deluxe version of like 40 songs. I'm like, but yeah. So going back to Man on the Moon 3, um, it certainly with this album, it certainly feels as though he's taken a lot of influence from Travis Scott. Certainly, what I've heard from Travis Scott, which mercifully isn't much. The kind of sounds and even some of the vocalizations as well sound very similar to Travis. And I know that Travis Scott has been influenced by Kid Cudi, but for someone as influential to modern music as Cudi, it feels a bit strange for him to be taking taking on such an influence from someone who's already kind of aping his style as it is. And it doesn't. So it means that the album doesn't really feel quite as strong as the earlier chapters in the Man on the Moon series. Certainly not the first two acts, being split into acts like the other Man on the Moon albums have done. The first two acts are fairly similar. It does pick up a bit in the latter two acts, where we get a bit more of a bit more diversity with the sound. Elsie's Baby Flashback in particular has more of a country rock kind of sounds. It's very different from the rest of the album. I think there's a sample or an interpolation of House of the Rising Sun on there, 'cause it certainly sounds like it in parts of it. September 16th, which happens after, is one day away from being a classic song. So yeah, I mean, none of the songs are bad necessarily, but they do kind of all a lot to say, particularly in the first half, sound very similar. So it does come a bit bland after a while. An interesting range of guest features. Phoebe Bridgers turns up towards in the latter half of the album. We get Skepta and Pop Smoke, a posthumous appearance from Pop Smoke on the same song earlier on. Trippie Redd appears later on again as one of the new generation of artists. But as I say, no, they still don't really add that much to the overall album. But again, I think there's a lot just due to all the songs that do kind of sound similar, regardless of who's on there. And say only towards the end where you do get a few more variances in the sounds do we get stuff that sounds a bit more interesting. Number 8, I'm gonna go Intergalactic, which I have sort of covered already in another video. So who wants to know proper review, you can look at that. But just suffice to say that I think this album kind of holds together better than Man on the Moon 3. It's only just feels, I don't know, just more cohesive. And the songs are just overall stronger, I feel. Perhaps with it being a soundtrack, it gives it that feel. But anyway, number 7, Wizards. The collaborative project with him and Dr. Genius, which was released February 2012. It was kind of like, say, as a collaborative kind of, again, a bit of an alternative rock sound, not quite as grungy as Speeding and Bullet to Heaven. So it does have some more life to it. But I mean, considering Dr. Genius produces quite a lot with Cudi, it feels a little bit strange to make a whole collaborative project. We're going to say when he's so heavily involved in particularly a lot of the older albums. I suppose in one sense, with this not really being a rap album. It gives them a chance to explore that the instrumental side and the vocal side of things. So Cudi again, uh, taking more of a instrumental role, playing guitars on the album. And there's definitely some strong songs on there. There's a uh, decent cover of "Where Did You Sleep Last Night." Lead single "Teleport to Me." Jamie's quite a strong, spacey sounding track. And we do get a lot of that kind of atmospheric sounds that Cudi was working with around this kind of time. But again, it doesn't really feel too out of place from any of the other projects that are being released around this kind of time, and it may have, some of the songs may have just worked better on one of those projects from around then. This basically, not a bad album particularly, definitely listenable. They certainly have great chemistry together, but nothing to stand out either. So number 6, I'm gonna go Satellite Flight, The Journey to the Mother Moon. This released in February 2014 as kind of like a surprise release. Was initially supposed to be an EP, then got kind of extended to a full-length album. It was kind of supposed to be a bridge into, at that point, Man on the Moon 3, which didn't end up going quite that way. But certainly as a project, the moon aesthetic of it certainly comes through quite strongly. Not all of the album is, songs in the sense of having verses and choruses. In fact, quite little of it is. A lot of it is quite instrumental. There's quite a few instrumental songs on here, and instrumentally, a lot of the album does have quite a spacey, lunar sounds to it. You can certainly hear a lot of these songs soundtracking space exploration documentary or something like that. So certainly for that aspect, it works very well. Certainly, and then just randomly in the middle of the album, we get quite an ethereal R&B-ish collaboration with Raphael Sadiq, which is a very good collaboration. Bauman Jeans, the name of the track. Very good collaboration. Certainly the strongest song on the album, but perhaps not for the sounds that it gives, which doesn't quite fit in with the moon sounds of the rest of the album. But still, for something that's essentially meant to be an interlude into a later project, it does hold up pretty well as its own album. So number 5, we are going Kids See Ghosts, the collaborative album with Kanye West, which again I have covered in my Kanye West discography, so won't really add too much to that. Just suffice to say that this is an album that could have done with some more songs to it to kind of beef it up a bit. It was clear that they still had chemistry at this point in their careers, and just even 3 more songs could have certainly benefited it a lot. It just what's on there is already quite strong. It just feels quite bereft with it being such a short project, and it would have been nice to see what the pair of them what more they could have come up with, essentially. But yeah, certainly a very strong album for what is on there, and probably could have been stronger than some of the other albums that we're about to look at if there was more to it. So number 4, we're going to go with Indie Cuds. In terms of the ends of the Good Music discography, and released in March 2013. Then this is so the final one released as part of Good Music and started to transition into moving from Universal Motown onto Republic, where the rest of his discography has been released, and creating his recreating in a way his own label with Wicked Awesome to differentiate from the Dream On label, which the earlier stuff was released under. Anyway, this is also kind of more of this. So Kelly mentioned that this was kind of like Dr. Dre 2001 type album, with there being more collaborations, and Cudi taking a bit more of a backseat and kind of focusing on the instrumentation. So it's like production is where Cudi. This is kind of the first album where he produces basically the entirety of the album. Just some co-production from Hit Boy on standout track Red Eye. And kind of has a so it maintains a lot of the sounds that the kind of atmospheric sounds that Cudi was using on his earlier projects, but a bit more up tempo. Certainly, towards the end we get some more funkier sounding songs with Cold Blooded and Afterwards Bring Your Friends. In terms of collaborations, we get quite a eclectic range, which, given Cudi's eclectic nature, does make sense. We get a kind of a mixed. They either seem to be people who were kind of rising at the time of the album's release, Kendrick Lamar, A$AP Rocky, Haim, Father John Misty, or people who were quite big 20 years before, RZA, Too Short, Michael Bolton, who appears on the aforementioned Afterwards track in kind of an understated performance, because going for more of the funkier sound rather than quite the kind of the built-in rocker sound that you'd probably expect from him, which is an interesting way to use him. So there's only a few songs where Cudi is the background, really, and these tend to be like the bigger collaborative tracks with Haim, with RZA, where he doesn't have so much of a vocal presence, only a kind of attributing background vocals. The rest of the album, he is pretty much front and center. So, in terms of a collaborative album, it doesn't quite do its job, but certainly in terms of expanding on Cudi as a producer, it does it proves that Cudi has certainly got his ear for production, knows what sounds work well for him, and a way that he can bring his sound into other artists as well. And so you could showcase him as a producer for other artists. Perhaps a bit of a lengthy project when you have a 9-minute song on there that can certainly take some justifying, and with the song again is Afterwards, which we're talking about, beginning as say more of a funky song and then kind of changing into a bit of a more traditional Cudi sound for the Ride Out section, for what is sort of a dance track. A bit confusing, and again, it's probably not justified to be as long as it was, but it is what it is. And on the whole, in terms of production, the album is really strong, and I say, and some great collaborators on there. So yeah, for a showcase of Cudi as a producer, I think it's very worth it. Definitely worth a listen. Number three, Passion, Pain, and Demon Slaying, released in December 2016 as sort of a comeback album for him after the not very well received Speeding Bullet to Heaven and a few personal issues that were plaguing him around this time. Um, so, and it kind of follows a bit of the in terms of the layout and structure of the album, it kind of follows the act structure that the Man on the Moon albums do. So, in a sense, this is kind of a better contender for a Man on the Moon 3 than Man on the Moon 3 actually became. Largely because the songs are a bit more varied on here. While we do get a lot of that, psychedelic, moving into kind of trappy, trippy kind of sounds throughout it. It doesn't all blend together completely. Um, and it kind of helps that we get a bit more of a range of producers on the album as well. While Cudi and Plain Platt and Mike Dean, I think, do helm the majority of the songs. We do get All In, produced by Mike Will, made it in one of his better produced songs. And Pharrell Williams produces three of the highlight tracks. He's certainly a welcome breath of fresh air onto the album. Producing, say, standout track by Design featuring Andre 3000, and closing track and one of the singles, Surfing, which is a real banger to end the album on. Great selection there. So Andre 3000 appears again on the guide for more of a rap feature. We also get appearances from Willow Smith. Jaden Smith also makes a brief vocal appearance later on the album as well as Travis Scott appearing on the album in Baptized by Fire. So yeah, generally these songs are pretty strong. And it is a bit of a lengthy album. It goes in at about 87 minutes altogether, which is a little bit too long. And there's certainly parts of the album which could have been trimmed a bit. I mean, particularly like the third act of the album does drag a little and does get a little bit bland in comparison to some of the older, earlier songs. But still, for a comeback project and just for really kind of like re-establishing that Cudi sound, I think this does a really great job. And yeah, there's some really, really, really strong tracks on here. Definitely, worth going through. So now I'm sure we can all see where this is going for our top two. And it was really quite tough. These are kind of at the same level for me, but I think I am going to go at number two for Man on the Moon, The End of Day. So the first Man on the Moon album, released September 2009, debut for Good Music and a debut album. It is a great introduction to Cudi's sound. We kind of get a like dreamy kind of aesthetic throughout, where particularly as explained by the narration from Common, we follow Cudi as he struggles to kind of differentiate between his reality and his dreams or his nightmares. Certain tracks on the album are listed as nightmares. Um, it does feel like there's perhaps I think with the acts and the overall say dream element of the album, perhaps a bit more could be done to explain these differentiations. I say the narration does do some uh, help with that, although again that could probably have been used a bit more as well. You don't want to completely fill the album with narration, but when you have a story such as this that Cudi's trying to get through, Common's appearances in terms of narration, he appears a couple of times at the beginning, kind of in the middle, and then right at the end. So perhaps a little bit too sparingly. Perhaps it could have been used to establish the acts a bit more, but I mean maybe that's splitting hairs. It does do a good job overall, and Cudi's music is certainly very different to anything else that was happening around this time. You can see why he became so influential from these songs. Just looking at personal personal demons and just things affecting him in his life, but attacking them in a in a lot of different ways. Making Alive Nightmare one of the kind of bestial kind of almost werewolf kind of aesthetic for it. Um, Lead single Day and Night obviously is a very trippy kind of experience to go through. The epic Sky Might Fall is a strong highlight, produced by Kanye West, who also produces Make a Say, with a Lady Gaga sample, which features himself and Common as well. Getting appearances from Ratatat and MGMT on Pursuit of Happiness, which no one else was doing around that time. Really establishes Cudi as different from anything else in any kind of music, really, at that point, let alone hip hop. Cudi's Own, a very strong, pacier song in comparison to a lot of the kind of slower atmospheric tracks like a Mr. Solo Dolo, for example. So yeah, so definitely some really really strong songs on here. I just feel that the overarching story could have been told a bit better when you're making a story album. Essentially, I do feel that the story itself perhaps should be a bit better defined. Um, but that's again that's just kind of me nitpicking. It is still a really really strong album overall. So that goes leads us into number one, Man on the Moon 2, Legend of Mr. Rager, or Ghost in the Machine, as the closing narration of Man on the Moon initially suggested it was going to be, and it initially was meant to be Ghost in the Machine. But it changed to kind of explore this Mr. Rager alter ego a bit better, which is kind of I suppose it makes a bit more sense. It helps kind of explore the darker nature of the album a bit, perhaps a bit better, because it certainly is a very dark album. Certainly, the darkest that we get from Cudi at any point, kind of building a bit on the kind of nightmarish aspects of the initial Man on the Moon, whilst dealing with the newfound pressures of fame and everything that comes with that. Exploring his drug use and past addictions and near overdoses, or feel overdoses. Yeah, certainly it's very. You get some very harrowing listens, very claustrophobic listens at times. The collaborations with Mary J. Blige, "Don't Play a Song" and "These Worries" are certainly quite haunting uh, listens. The final act of it, featuring All Along and Ghost, certainly build on this even more to kind of like crescendo right to the end till we kind of ride back out of it with closing track "Trapped in My Mind." Not necessarily as strong a track as the previous two, but I guess it is kind of necessary as a come down from the, say, quite harrowing listens of the predecessing songs. Um, Other strong tracks on the album include lead single, the more uh, rock influence "Raise Me," produced by Jim Johnson and featuring Kanye West. Opening track Scott Mescudi versus the World featuring CeeLo Green is really strong. The eerie collaboration with Cage and St. Vincent in Maniac. Yeah, certainly very very dark, which is kind of why lots of aspects of it appeal to me quite a bit. But certainly very telling, very brutally honest, just about Cuddy and his life. So definitely a very strong experience for an album, and that's really all you can ask for an album, is to just give you an experience and make you feel some things. Even if it's not, even if it's not necessarily the most like you know wordy, technical, lyrical hip hop album, which I'm sure we will be getting onto at some point. Cuddy definitely has a very strong discography to go through, and yeah, I advise you all to explore. And I will certainly see you for a future edition. Take care.